Managing expenses in Concourse 360. To begin, there are two ways to get expenses within Concourse 360. The first way is, of course, to, in the upper left-hand corner, click Add New Expense, which opens up the Add New Expense box. Next, fill out all the required information, such as entering a work order complete date, adding a description, putting in a property address, adding the category that this expense is associated with, selecting a company name. If your company's name is not within the program already, you can click the Add button to the right to add a new company, an invoice number, the invoice's total, any notes that are necessary for this expense, and an invoice if necessary, if you have one, and click Save to complete. Of course, another way to get an expense within Concourse 360 is to complete the task, bid, and work order line of processing. They were reviewed in our earlier videos. To get to that line of videos, click the link in the upper left-hand corner, which would take you to the appropriate video. Here are a few features within the Expenses panel in Concourse 360. To add a vendor paid date for an expense in Concourse 360, on the right hand side, click the checkmark box underneath functions for the appropriate expense. Then click inside of the box underneath paid vendor to add a vendor paid date of your choice. Then click Save. Additionally, these directions are the same for submitted paid dates and received money dates. Make sure you click the box on the right hand side, click inside the column, appropriate date, click Save. To create an invoice or a receipt, once again make sure the checkmark box on the right hand side for the expense is clicked off. Click either Create Invoice or Create Receipt. You'll get essentially the same pop-up. Enter Paid to the order of, that information right there, put in the invoice number, invoice date, make sure the information is correct, and click Save to complete. One thing to be aware of within the My Expenses tab is that whenever underneath Paid Vendor you have a blue cell, that means that an invoice has been created for that expense. You have the option of either creating an individual check for an expense or creating one total check for multiple expenses. To create one individual check, click off the checkmark box on the right hand side underneath functions for that expense, click Create Individual Check, and enter all the appropriate information and click Save to complete. To create one total check for multiple checks, make sure that the checkmark boxes for all the appropriate expenses are checked off on the right hand side. One thing to note is that it would be impractical to make one total check for multiple different vendors, so make sure that every vendor is the same for this one total check. Then click Create One Total Check. The Create Check box pops up. It has all the expenses inside of it. Make sure all the information is correct, and then click Save to complete. To view any and all invoices, receipts, and checks that have been made within the Expenses tab, go to the appropriate expense on the right-hand side and click the green plus button. This will bring you to all the documents that are associated with that expense. To view any of these PDFs, any of these checks, invoices, or receipts, just click the PDF hyperlink on the left-hand side and it will pop up in the form of a PDF that document. If there are any checks within the document box for an expense that need to be voided, all that needs to be done is just to click the void check box on the right hand side for that specific check and simply click Save. This will take that PDF with that check on it and put a large void mark across the check, essentially voiding that check. Inside of this panel also, you can upload any files that you need to by clicking Select File and selecting any files that need to be uploaded. into this document and clicking Open to save them. And of course, after all of your changes have been made, click Save to save any and all changes. If it becomes necessary to email any documents you have uploaded within My Expenses, simply click off underneath the Functions column. Any expenses that have documents inside of them need to be emailed. Click Email Selected Docs, which pops up the Send Email box. Fill out all the required information, and for all the documents that you need to be emailed, simply on the left-hand side next to documents down here, click off all the boxes that need to be emailed, and after all the information is complete, click Send. You also have the option to send all the PDFs that have been identified on the left-hand side as one single attachment by clicking this box right here, inserting a new file name, and clicking Send. To edit multiple dates at one time, all that needs to be done is that every expense that needs its date edited needs to be checked off on the right-hand side underneath Functions. Then for the appropriate column, click the first expense row, select a date, and click Save. This date will be the date that will be copied down to any other expenses that have the checkmark box checked off on the right-hand side. To actually copy and paste this date down to any of the expenses that have been checked off, click any appropriate checkmark box up at the top, whether it be submitted date, the received date for the money, or paid vendor. If you click the box off, that date will then be copied down to any of the expenses that have been checked off on the right hand side. One thing to note is the only date that will be copied down will be the date farthest to the top.